in.
Coming.
My thing is stuck, it won't work. Sorry. Just have to presume I'm here.
Hang on, Michaela, I'll be there. I'm coming.
Got into it, Chair.
Rightio, we'll get underway, shall we? Is everyone happy?
Just go on.
There you go. Welcome to everybody here. I think we don't have anyone from Te Marama here. Gail was meant to come along, wasn't she?
I spoke to her this morning and she indicated she would be coming in, so
Okay, so she,
hopefully they will arrive.
and you have to shoot away early, do you, Nick?
I'll have to be away before 3 months. We're okay for the public board now as long as so speak quickly.
Yeah. So look, welcome to everybody here. I'll sort of, it's probably just to start off, Paul and the staff need to get things out of these meetings, so it's important we do that. But I'd like good open discussion, and if there's some things that I go past, just come back to them. It's not a problem whatsoever. And regarding questions, I'll take the lead from Lyndall from the other day that the hands go up, but hey, just butt in anyway. We're a small group. If you have to do that, that's okay. Bit of a hybrid sort of system, you could say. So I'll call for any apologies. Do we have? Evans,
Evans and
Emberton, any? Yeah, any others?
I'll unapologise.
Sal Lesk is also an apology.
Still,
Yeah.
okay. Any others? We're okay. Remove
Yeah,
that.
happy to move that.
Second. Vote on that. All happy in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Carried. Thank you. So, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest?
Peter, I don't know if it's relevant, but I'll mention it anyway. I'm involved with the Ariti Total Dune Forest, and we're getting some assistance from Environment Southland for pest control and weed control work. So, and some of that is part of this report. So, thought I'd better mention that.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Morris. And you just manage that yourself, or the councillors here will manage that if we think it's appropriate.
I should probably acknowledge a conflict of interest. I just purchased a bull off another forum presenters.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor Roy. To that, that'll be noted. Note that down, Michaela. Thank you. Right.
Only 2 minutes late.
Oh, hi, Gail. Welcome.
Good work, Gail.
Okay, that's all there. We'll leave it at that. So we're going to go into the public forum now. So we have some guests that are coming in to talk to us from the Ariti liaison committee. So we've got David, and Shannon. Would you like to come up to the front here? Just while that, if Morris is waving behind me, could you tell me, please? Because I'm not looking backwards.
I can see the slides now.
Very good. So you all sort of know everyone, but just for the sake of the meeting, could you just sort of say who you are and your roles?
I'm David Rose, co-chair of the Reading Kitchen.
Yeah, I'm Dave Marshall, the other co-chair.
And Shannon McEwen, the joining landowner from the issues we're talking about today, and also the owner and general manager of Rollers Transport.
Thanks very much. Okay. So, yeah, we're all yours.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity. We're coming here today because we've got some concerns, and following the liaison committee meeting we had on the 9th of November, which we had 20 spread throughout the catchment. We've got PowerPoint for you. So we've got two main concerns. One's around the stop banking system and the other, the ability to remove gravel to complement river works. So the already stop banking is 108 Ks, and just kind of some bullet points, you can come back to them. In a meeting and just subsequent to it, we were shocked that there were proposals to rebuild the entire stop banking system. We're not sure how these things yet leads to the point that I guess staff would have done a bit of time on it without any liaison input. We're really quite concerned about that. And saying that other proposals like Grant Gerard's refencing proposal, we had proactively were told about it, and that was the reason of their meeting. We're struggling also to contact, so the liaison, the catchment is struggling to contact and repair the worst priority one damage in a timely manner. So that is about the issues with the stop. Priority one is the worst damage, and leads us to our next point, that does the catchment division need the reallocation of the staff resources? There's 180 people work here. We're not saying anything against Paul Pollard and Grant Gerard. We think they're doing a great job, but seemingly hearing it's just us guys, and so we do wonder about the reallocation of this resource, because the priority one damage, if it's not fixed, can lead to the banks breaching. That's like the worst, stock on the side or trees growing on it. So yeah. Moving on. So what we do see is the solution for stop banking issues is education on landowner responsibilities. The two main ones being management of grazing practice to prevent damage, that is heavy stop, and spraying noxious weeds and keeping trees off. So common sense stuff. It was quite a bit of discussion in our meeting, and it was quite widely thought that a lot of people have no idea about the stop banks, and that it's not good enough to say that a sharemilker mightn't have heard about it. It's just like health and safety. It's something that has to be done. And I guess, you know, we're thinking lots of radio advertising, saturation advertising, stop banks, you've got responsibilities there to combat, there to protect the community, that sort of thing. Right, move on to gravel issues. So a recent tour of the Arete in early September, gravel was the largest issue. So haven't got any photos for you today, but we have got photos. The Mosman Bridge has a huge build-up of gravel, and it may damage the bridge or cut a new course around the north end of the bridge. And we had a district councillor with us that day, and he said, as we put to him, well, why isn't district council and he is working closer on these sorts of issues? Yeah, it's a real issue up there, and it's a real issue around many of the bridges that we went to that day.
Just clarification, Dave. That's on the Five Rivers Road. That bridge is the one you're talking about, is it? Yeah, thank you.
There's an opportunity under ES supervision to better maintain the catchment and with gravel, and that is something that for years we've tried to deal with gravel issues under council supervision to lessen river works, and it's been very difficult to get further down that track. So with that, slide. So we're going to talk about the bank overtopping issue that happened in 2020 at Aporo as an example, and it's a trial work. You remember this, Lyndall, from our AGM, we've been talking about it. The Aporo gravel extraction trial, we're 2 years into it now and it's still not completed. We have a commercial solution that makes our rating dollar go further. We are talking about crossing the river, as it is only 100 metres from Royalbush's processing facility instead of the 14k round the road cart. Now I'll hand over to Shannon and he'll give you some more detail.
Thanks, David. There were some cross sections done on the Reedy River down by the rail bridge and the water treatment plant. And there was 5 different sites identified there with builds up, quite high build up of gravel on the beaches. 2 of those sites are across from our processing plant. Now, viability for us and for everybody in the room is the gravel has to be processed as a raw product. It has no worth. There's not enough clay in it. There's not enough fill in it to become a raw product. It has to be processed. Currently, for us to truck that one site around is 2,300 truck movements. We're going to have to run it through a farmer's dairy farm, which will destroy his lanes. We're going to have to use half of his paddock to stockpile it, which he's going to want compensation for in some way, shape, or form. So it actually makes a product unviable. It makes it a useless resource for everybody that we can't use. We propose to cross the river up from the Invercargill water intake. As David said, it's the smallest part of the river. There's conditions around when we can cross it at its lowest peak, everything else. We were effectively bulldozed by 2 government departments, being Fish and Game and DOC, mainly around the effects of silt. Now, for me, been living on this river my whole life, the amount of silt that goes down there in a fresh that we will see will be 100,000 million times more than what I will use to cross the river. But unfortunately, we don't have the data. Now, either does Fish and Game or either does DOC, hence why we're here today. We want to be able to put something together, and we have some information from ecologists on how we can do tests to show silt and silt levels and how we cross. But I suppose at the moment, and I'll hand back to David, we can't get to that point.
So I guess the point that Shannon's making is he'd actually like to do the trial and get some data, but we're not allowed to do the trial. And it just seems daft. If you can't do anything different, then you're stuck in this paradigm where you're just reaching into the ratepayer's pot all the time when there's a common sense solution. So get some data, understand what you're talking about, and it's something that happens freely in other parts of the country. The consent in Marlborough for crossing the river is 35-year consent. We're talking about 2 weeks. So, you know, we're at loggerheads and we're coming here because of the next thing. Been made aware to us, and we have seen some email proof of some of the way that Fish and Game bully staff to add costs. So you end up wanting the ecologist to come and spend more money, but if we can't do the trial, he can't do the trial. So it's all desktop guest stuff, and it just frustrates you to spend 20 or 30,000. It takes us through the summer again. So another year goes by because we're looking at going across the river in the summer when there's low flows. How deep would the river be, Shannon? You were saying,
To be fair, wouldn't be over your gumboots, to be fair, that river.
Red bands or knees.
Yeah, red patch, yeah.
and we're wanting to we had a meeting on site and had someone that was drafting the consent, and we thought we would be able to talk that through, but Fish and Game now don't want, they think that the on-site meetings are not useful. You know, if you've got a different point of view, that's fine, let's hear it. But if you're not prepared to turn up, then that's when you draw the line. So here we are.
I think the big thing is about the data, because DOC have come back and says I'll accept 2 to 3 truck movements, 2 to 3 loads an hour. Now, okay, based on what data, how much silt does 2 to 3 truck movements an hour do compared to a trial we're looking to do? There is actually no data. It's a number that's been pulled out of the sky. So it's about actually getting facts and data to present to show the damage, if any damage to the environment for doing this job. And there can be things put in place to mitigate any risks. But in order to do that, we have to get data. It's a view for Southland.
So we haven't actually got time to show you the photos today, but basically what's happening in that area, it used to be one of the best black-billed rookeries in New Zealand. And it's now, according to the DOC person, when we had our on-site meeting, we said to him, how much habitat have you got? He said, look, I don't have to come back, it's 0. It's covered in grass, it was covered in trees as well, so the trees are gone, but the grass, so no habitat. At the end of what we're talking, there should be a rockery there for the black-billed gulls. So, yeah, so that's why we're here, or one of the reasons we're here. As I said, they're not, Fish and Game are not prepared to come to any more face-to-face meetings to consider consent conditions. So we just think that's totally unacceptable. And will Fish and Game recompense ratepayers for the damage if the river breaks out? Because that was the first time ever it had breached the stop banks in that stretch of the river at Apura. I farm upstream, and in 99 it went over my bank for 3 hours between 12 and 3 a.m. In 2020, it didn't go over my banks, but it went over at Apura, which shows something's dramatically changed, and that's why we're trying to identify this issue and get it sorted.
Dave, you're getting close to that 10 minutes now, but
Yeah,
I think you've got to the heart of the issue.
We've got
Yeah,
one
well.
more slide, Pete, so just hold fire for a second. So ES cannot continually put up rates. If we cannot evolve catchment management, we're going to struggle to maintain a stop banking system. In summary, we need you as councillors to do a tour. Go out and have a look. There's nothing like getting out of here and going and seeing it firsthand. We need you to review the catchment management resourcing. That was the comment at the start around helping maintain the banks and get the priority one issues done. We need education so that the landowners know they've got stop bank responsibilities and, for example, a good radio campaign. You need to deal to the NGO bullying, and we need to work better together for our ratepayers and proactively. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Boris, for that. So you made your point really clear and well. We've got a couple of questions building up. So just remind you these points of clarification too. It's not a lot of two-way things. So we've got Jeremy and Eric first up.
Can you just clarify when you say you can't, it's because of the consent? You're not able to get a consent to do the trial. Is that why you can't get the data?
We can't get a consent, we can't get approval to cross the river at all.
Yeah, approval, but you need a consent to do that. But you want all parties to agree before you do put an application in, while you're trying to get the groundwork done. I'm just trying to clarify, have you put a consent in? You haven't got the consent? Or are you?
Still on hold because we can't.
Okay, so you've applied, I'm just trying to clarify what you can't while you talk to other parties. So I understand that this, from my point of view, I suppose it's just to clarify, so obviously this is an ongoing thing and it'll be highly advantageous to all parties. In regards to, I can't discuss that. But I was just making sure. So there's a consent in play.
There's a consent in play, but also
But it's on hold.
wanting to do some trial work to
Yeah.
understand what the changes to water quality, and you can't even do the trial work to
But
get the
is that
data to
part-
put it in consent. So
Is that another consent or is that I'm trying to work out the consents.
That's what the other parties have indicated they want.
So they want another consent to do the trial, or they want the trial done.
They are saying, I think they're right.
Yeah.
So they're saying that currently they don't agree to us crossing the river.
Yes.
But there's no data to say
Yeah.
what the effects to the environment are. They've recommended we involve an ecologist, which myself I have no issue in doing. But in order to put an ecologist in, I have to do a trial to show data.
Yeah.
So
But they're not letting
So what we're saying, you gotta get away from the computer desk and actually do some real stuff that's relevant to the actual site. And there's nothing, surely there's nothing better than that. But the way is at the moment, there seem to be at loggerheads to get that happening.
Oh, yeah.
Three quick questions. This is to deal with the build-up of gravel that's occurred somewhere. That's one, you're right. Two, will you have to modify the riverbed in order to operate the ford?
no,
Three, have you considered getting a private provider to write a report for you about what you're doing? And how much would that cost?
an ecologist reports around $20,000.
20,000?
We've already had other reports there. People come for 20 or 30,000. And the reports give you an indication. They normally tell you what you know, and they're actually written without hardly anyone going there. And they always have a big out at the other end to give extra work that could be done. So, you know, doing the real trial work here is the most common sense thing to actually understand the effects.
Have you tendered that process to private providers, or you just dealt with one?
To be fair, it's Environment South, and they've said, well, we need to do this, and we've said, well, okay, you need to do this. It's been through.
Yeah, but if
And
there's
I as a private business, finding out myself, and that's the indication of price.
from one or more,
It's one.
thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Goddo.
Yes. Just a question about your point you raised about struggling to contact people. I'm just not clear about who you were struggling to contact. Can you just clarify that?
Well, there's 110, I think, priority one, which is on stop banking on the and then meeting the other night, they were saying they're struggling to get round all those people because
Our ES staff is struggling to get around all the landowners.
to let them know of the issues on their property.
Right.
So unless you know about the issue, then it's hard to do something about it. And the priority one is the worst issues. So it seemingly there's so much that they're doing not only on their catchment, I know Paul's involved in others. And that's why the question is, do you need to reallocate some resource? Because catchment is quite, it's 180 k's long, and it just seems that lacking a bit of administration support.
I'll just ask a supplementary question. In what ways have you helped staff make those contacts through your catchment group? Has there been some steps to help them with that through the catchment group and the liaison group?
The banks are walked, and so you identify issues when you do the inspection work.
Yeah, but you haven't helped staff contact any of the landowners.
Well,
Through your group.
the difficult thing for us is, I guess there's issues, and they want to know timeframes and what has to happen and stuff. Unless we've been there, we don't know, but we're not really, I wouldn't think legally allowed to tell people that.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm asking if you have helped ES staff contact the right landowners. Have you? No, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Harold.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions. I'm assuming this gravel build-up, is that the one that Henry Hudson did some work on a number of years ago, so that work has been done on the need for it to be removed? And secondly, you talk about being by drawing the Invercargill intake was below this work or above, and as of a surface water or as of a groundwater tank. So would possibly still have any effects on the process anyway, but I was just wondering approximately are you above the water tank or not?
But again, I think the question, it would be interesting if we could get the data to show how much sediment is actually going to be stirred up. And then if anybody's been over the bridge over there really recently, there's been a couple of weeks now, it's been quite dirty for a long time, and you can't see a lot of filtering and things. We're talking for 2 weeks. So to get the job done, it's a temporary situation, but it's an issue that's dragged on for years and seemingly been in the too hard basket. And now it's leading to overtopping, and I guess if it breaks out, then the community will want to know what's being done.
We've got one more question here from Councillor McFarlane. I think we'll just wrap it up with
I'm
that.
showing my intelligence, lack of intelligence here. I'm just understanding the consent because you put the consent in, but would you have to need, so this is just all part of that one consent. It's been put on there. I've said, you need data. Would that be conditions? Could you put that in conditions into a consent? Or do you need a separate consent for that trial? Or could you put a separate consent in for that trial? And that hasn't been applied for as such, but there's indication that people wouldn't support that consent. But that's not to say you couldn't apply for that specific and then get those, but they need to
I guess
put their input
we're not
into
there
that.
for help here, Chair.
Yeah, I'm trying to tease it out, see exactly what. And okay, that clarifies. I just want to know that. The other quick thing is, we want more staff resource. You're obviously keen for a rate increase, so you no problem paying for it.
We did mention the word reallocation. I'm
Reallocate,
not talking about new
or
stuff.
reallocate it onto your rate. So that's
Some more resource from the 190 staff we have to help the catchment.
Well, we might just end it there. We've had a good wee session. You made your point very clearly.
Can I tell you one little humorous story to leave you with something? It remakes the point that not everybody is to take a lot of things for granted. So recently I had a professional person came in and has a house in Gore and just said how high the rates were. And she'd got her ES rating account and she couldn't understand it. And she goes, do we really pay that much for their uniforms? The uniform annual general charge. She thought she was paid for the uniforms. So none of us would take it, but it was seemingly, and she said it with a straight face. So you go, wow.
They didn't have one right side state.
So thanks very much. You made your point very clearly, but I just want to finish off by saying you've made quite a serious statement in here by Fish and Game bullying staff. So is that an assumption that you've come to? I don't think I can leave it alone.
They're dictating to us how the river should be managed. Now,
So dictating to staff.
they are dictating to your staff and
It's your
they're
belief.
dictating to the landowners. Now, I know for a fact that in the Lower Arete, there is over 5K of area you can't fish because Fish and Game have upset private landowners. Now, and this is going on continuously up the rivers. They're wondering why people are being denied access to the property, and it is because of Fish and Game and their mannerism on how they treat people. They need to sit around the table with us, whether it's a committee or a working committee of a couple of councillors and maybe somebody from the liaison committee, but they need to be able to get into the real world and understand what's happening.
Okay, Dave. Thanks very much. So that's your belief anyway. Would you say, look, I'm sorry for carrying this on, but would you say that maybe Fish and Game believe that other people were doing similar?
Well, put it this way, Peter, if you're not prepared to front up and talk about your concerns, then what are you doing?
Yeah, no, fair point, fair point. Hey, look, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much. Any potential for an ongoing discussion at the committee chairs get together in Winton coming up? And maybe you spoke of some photos there. Would that be a good idea?
This was only to warm you up. We will finish.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
guys.
So we'll move back to the meeting proper if we can for the confirmation of the minutes. I'll take it that they've all been read.
Move.
Thank you very much. We got a seconder for passing the minutes. We'll vote to that. Show of hands. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Against. Okay, carried. Thank you. So we go to notification of extraordinary and urgent business, so supplementary reports. You're not aware, right? Okay. Any others there? So, okay, we'll move on to questions. Do we have any questions? Okay. We'll move on to chairman and councillors' reports. Any reports from around the province? Surely there must be something. No interesting meetings. Anyone want to? Nothing like that. Okay, rightio.
I think we're very early in the.
Too early in the-
People haven't had a chance to be at any meeting, Mr. Chairman. Otherwise, there would be some reports, but.
Fair enough. So look, okay, we've got an important bit of business here, election of a deputy chair to the committee. I'd ask for nominations for that role.
Nominate Councillor Roy.
Okay, have we got a
I'll second that.
second?
I could develop into something with this opportunity.
Have we got any further nominations? Okay, well, that's pretty easy. Do we have to go to a vote on that, or was just done?
Just clear it.
Clear. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric.
Didn't really show up, didn't it?
So now we've got
Skill based.
the report section coming up. Paul, so the first item, biosecurity, biodiversity operations. Okay. Thanks, Ellie.
So, for any, I think everybody knows, mostly we'll give our work program updates. So we'll start with Ali, we'll move through to the different sections. So, because it's early on in the triennium, these are our standard work program updates, but as we progress, there'll be more specific reports that will be coming through. And you may pass some resolutions from time to time that you ask us for certain information and we'll respond to you in that way. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ali.
I am going to take the paper as pretty much read. I just have a couple of updates. So the first one is, I believe Paul updated you yesterday, but we have had an issue with Undaria in Fiordland, and we have now found Undaria down in Dusky Sound. Thomas here. So I guess this is my only slide for the day, but we have this is the Akron Passage, and Brexie is up here. And unfortunately, Undaria was reported here. We managed to get the Brexie dive team down this was the day after it was reported, and they spent the end of last week and the weekend searching this area. As you'll see on the map, any of the red crosses they found in Undaria, green crosses they found in Undaria, but weren't able to remove it. The red ones they managed to get to. The bit we're really worried about is this quite long stretch here. You'll see that that's about 2 kilometres long, where there's Undaria of different ages, but there is mature in there, and it's popped up on multiple locations. So it's very disappointing. It's something we're still trying to work out what next. We have had conversations with the Department of Conservation, Fiordland Marine Guardians, and Biosecurity New Zealand, and we will be putting a plan together. It's just to let you know the extent of what we found, and that we are working on it. The other things in addition to the report, which are slightly better news, one is in terms of biocontrol. The work we've been doing with Manaki Whenua to find a biocontrol for Chilean flame creeper has resulted in some beetles being brought into the country for testing. So it's still very, 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 very early days, and we've got lots of things to work through. But that's a big step forward, that there might be something out there that eats Chilean flame creeper, which is a massive issue down here in Southland. So that's some pretty good news. And the other thing that I think it's worth just celebrating a little bit is that our Jobs for Nature team up in Fiordland doing the weeding work, Kylie and Sue were both nominated for Biosecurity Awards because of the amount of effort they've put into that programme, talking to all the landowners in Te Anau, and they were finalists in that award. So they went up to Auckland last week and had a bit of a celebration. So it's just something that I wanted to highlight, that I'm happy to answer any questions in the actual report.
In terms of the Tamatea area, have you got a plan for the dedication of it?
Not yet. We need to work out if that's going to be possible. Ideally, that's when our biosecurity strategy for Fiordland is that when we find new incursions, we try and eradicate them. So ideally, that's the point we'll be looking for, but we just need to work on what we can and can't do. So really early days.
My comment is if it's that big, then it's highly likely it's in other places as well. And I think I said last time, we need to have an ongoing Undaria plan, because we've seen what happened. It was only in Bluff, and now it's everywhere. So the job for nature funding ceases. What is the plan in terms of funding continuation of this program?
Maybe through you, Joe. There's no doubt that the Jobs for Nature funding has helped us to respond really well to Undaria and Brexit. And you're quite correct, the funding ceases this year. So this is our last season. So it's upon Ali and myself and Andy is to sort of how do we respond to that, given that we've come so far, I suppose, but you're quite correct, the funding does cease. So I think that's a conversation that we will have with our central government partners around what next. There's a lot of investment put into it by Environment Southland, so it's something that we're keen to trying to continue with. It's probably a little too early to say what we're going to do one way or the other at this moment, but keen to get your feedback on that. We do have things like long-term plans to look forward to that can help identify priorities. But currently it is a challenge in terms of that funding will cease, and clearly we've still got issues.
Thanks. Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just in regards to obviously the Boston control area review, whenever I see something that is keen to be rising and trying to understand obviously the issues in regards to there's a lot more forestry going in, looking to the head and the future and trying to deal with these situations. Obviously easier to knock them down when they're low and carried away. I just wanted to highlight that. I see you're reviewing the current model and trying to work out things, but it's certainly I think the program has been going really well. Named some good gains, but it's just sort of wanted to focus on that a wee bit. Just obviously it's going to take funding. The market for the first disappeared and things like that, so it's quite challenging. But is it going to, are we going to need money put into it, so to speak, to especially when you look at the forests that are going in, just creates more habitat for these animals, and obviously dogs' contribution would be great. I know everybody hates possums, but it's going to cost money and to look after it. So what are we looking at?
Yeah. So we're looking at and we're working with our friends up in the North Island councils on what the different options are. So we're finding that the initial control is really successful and that's working really well, but we are struggling to keep up with Osprey's rollout. So what we're doing works really well. We're not able to keep up with the amount of possible control leaving the area. But then the second thing is how we really enable and support landowners to keep doing it once we've done the initial control. So part of the review was, is it more economical to bring it back in-house and we do all of it, or is there a different way of working with landowners to support them on priority areas? There's a whole heap of questions that we need to work through, and if we can do it with the rest of the country and come up with a good solution, then we will. But
so good to hear it. Questions.
Yeah, Gail started asking a line of questions I've got. Within the area, we were on a containment program, and well, how do we need to rethink that? And given our meeting yesterday, when we learned about the Denman and Vexillin and the size of our fuel and coast and how much other monitoring are we doing in the other sounds, because there's quite a lot of boat activity through all of there, part of it. Are we just monitoring? Have we got the resource to actually check our marine environment to the level that we need to? That's the question.
No. We are doing a bare minimum. We normally do 2 monitoring trips a year. The last 2 years we've only managed to do 1 because of COVID.
Yeah.
We do have a plan that the University of Otago wrote for us that said this is what good monitoring would look like, and we know that we're not quite meeting that plan.
Thank you. Gail?
Oh, it's just a continuation. It's too late for Hamatea dusky. But you need to actually make ensuring that the other sounds aren't getting affected like that, because it's a creeper. It just keeps going, and every boat that goes in there has the potential for it to attach from there onto the, and they can take it to the next sound.
Without for you, Chip, because we're still in the sort of size of the problem stage, we could still remain hopeful that because we've got divers in close proximity, that with a little bit of hope, we can maybe come back and say we've got a plan to deal with it. But you're quite correct. it goes hand in hand with ongoing monitoring, and that's where we need to come back with a bit more of a strategic plan as to if we were to continue. And funding is obviously a challenge, but I think our intention would be through regional services come back with a bit of a plan. It is an operational issue, but I know that it's a concern for governance as well. So.
We'll make it the last question.
Yes, well, I'm going to have to leave soon, Mr. Chairman, but back up here, I'm sort of reasonably optimistic that it's, Brexit there, it's coming down there. It could be just the current that's moving it, but the containment thing may see, it's not like it's spread everywhere so far, so I've got some hope that we may still be able to go on top of it. We're not going to have to.
There was none there 10 years ago.
Thanks.
Pulling the funding from bluff.
Could I ask, someone moved to note that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, I didn't see you.
Oh, sorry. Yes, could I ask a question about a different matter? It's to do with Fish Passage on page 17. Of course. And just wanted to know what fish passages have been installed and whereabouts are they?
Yeah, I would have to bring you a map with the actual details of that. Most of them have been ropes and ladders and sort of small easy fixes, but I can bring a more full report on the exact details of which ones we've fixed and where to the next meeting or out of meeting.
Circulate. Can you do that? Thank you.
Could you actually take us out to look at one some stuff?
I'm sure we
I'd like to see what it is.
Were you talking about a fishing trip, Councillor?
Oh, no, I've seen the fish man and I'm saying, what are they? Be good to see them at play.
There could be an opportunity for a councillor to come along on some sort of work trip or something like that. Got to have your diving ticket, of course. Cool. But, did we have a seconder for the report?
Yeah.
All in favour? Aye. Yeah, carried. Against, carried. Thank you, Alan. So, Fiona was here.
Yeah, Ali.
Right there.
Jumping in, speaking to them.
So, Mr. Chairman, did I get from that Ali is going to provide us with a list of those fish passes?
Yes.
Circulate.
And a map.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, Fiona.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So obviously councillors will have had a chance to have a look through the report that Catchment Integration, we've compiled for Catchment Integration. I guess some highlights, if I can just scan through some of them. Obviously, intensive winter grazing remains a really significant focus for the organisation, actually, not just for our division. So particularly working closely with compliance and consents at the moment in terms of both delivering kind of presentations, so quite a strong demand for presentations to understand the actual pathways for the intensive grazing consents. But that's just one part of the conversation because we move at the start of next year into our proactive engagement, and then we know we move into the compliance activities for the winter. So looking to how we actually develop up those pieces of work and work, as I say, across the organisation and then as closely as I can with our farmers in our community. My sense is there's a reasonable level of confusion in our community, and part of that is they're just being kind of confronted with a whole lot of change. So one of the key themes when we go and share information with our community is just to be very clear that if you are in this space, these are the things that are available to you as options, and this is how you go about the consent process in particular. And also maintaining that focus, particularly on good practice. So we want farmers to be doing the right thing. That's kind of the main focus. And also similarly in the space of, if you like, regulatory freshwater farm plan pilot. So there's probably quite a long conversation to come with this committee and with the council around how the rollout happens in terms of freshwater farm plans, what we're learning from the pilot process, where we're working quite closely with MFE, with Te Marama, with farmers who are involved actively in the process. And we've also met with rural professionals. So again, it's very much a cross-organisational project with Te Marama to help us figure out how it is we are going to deliver freshwater farm plans once the regulations are turned on and we're sort of live and good to go. But that is a huge piece of work, and I very much want to acknowledge the staff who are involved in that project, because they've had to stand up pretty quickly to deliver some quite significant outcomes, both internally and also working with team on that one. I won't touch on this too much. You'll see this commentary on the closed landfill work and the contaminated sites remediation fund work and our hail register. The other thing I would probably like to comment on is the EnviroSchools hui. So we've just had 3 hui. They've taken very much a catchment focus over the last 3 days, and very much a Kia ora tiki tai focus. We've held one in Mataura at Dollamore Park. Our second hui yesterday was in relation to Aparima, held at Ototo, Dixie Toto Stream, and then today the team are up at the Tarangatua camp, I believe, and looking at the Areti. So we've had schools invited to all of those. We've been working in partnership with SIT and with Thriving Southland. The stations are to help familiarise both schools, but also teachers and parents with the health of our waterways, with the size of catchment, anchoring them in, that thinking and that knowledge. So as much as that comes through the EnviroSchools kaupapa, again, what's really important is drawing across our organisation and bringing out some of the science knowledge that we have and the information that the processes, and actually sharing that with our wider community. And in this current day, when there is quite a few challenges, we are somewhat bombarded by policy and regulatory discussions, being able to help our community understand the basis for some of this is super important. So again, acknowledgement to the team across ES and with our partners who we're working with on that. Otherwise, really very much questions.
Thanks for that, Fiona. Morris, would you be able to just turn your mute on there? It might be a good idea, but you have a question, so we'll start with you first.
Right, okay, thanks. No, I apologise for that coughing and everything that's going on. I want to ask a question on page 23 or 22 about the contaminated site remediation. I see you've been talking to Invercargill City Council. Does this include the problems with the old Invercargill City tip on the edge of the estuary? And is there any work being done to try and fix that?
So the Contaminated Sites Remediation Fund work, Councillor Rodway, relates to the area specifically there. So the Ocean Beach site and the Little Tahiti site. And there's specific reasons why those sites are able to be funded through that bucket of money out of Ministry for the Environment, and very much working with the landowners and the partners in that project. In terms of the New River Estuary and the closed landfill, we are in early conversations with staff around the information there, what information is needed. And so those will continue, and they have been ongoing at this point, around what information we need, how we might start to gather that information. And I think the thing that I have learned around managing contaminated sites is that understanding the nature of the site first is incredibly important, and we know that there's some further work to be done in that space in relation to New River Estuary and the closed landfill. Yeah.
So is there any time frame for that?
So we've got a next meeting, I believe, in December. So it's all I can say at this point is that we are progressing well with those conversations and making information available and identifying information that we think is really important. And that with that also comes what gaps there are that need to be addressed. So
can that be reported back at our next meeting then?
Yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Morris. Just while we're on that, you mentioned, Fiona, knowing what are in the sites. Well, knowing the sites first, where they are, surely must be even more important.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered some sort of amnesty with people? Because there will be people out in the communities that do know where stuff is buried, especially along the rivers, because we know for many, many decades the rivers were the rubbish dump, and that was just past behaviour.
No, good question, Mr. Chairman. So I just actually, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if this broader topic is probably worthy of a workshop discussion. Because actually, I guess it was probably 12 months ago, we have, for example, information that we've brought together through the Tonkin and Taylor tool, which actually identified closed landfills across the region, identified the risks associated with those in terms of climate change impacts. And then we've done sort of some further work to kind of, but particularly with Southern District and obviously now within Invercargill City, to actually identify the nature of those and then go out and find more information. So there is some of that work that already is in existence, absolutely.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Roy and McPhail questions.
Thank you, Chair. My questions are about the page 21 Southland Riparian project. And I think, great initiative. How far are we on the way with the project? Like, are we 10%, 20%? Another question is, what actually is a waterway? And you say, do all waterways open ditch? How much flow? And how are we promoting this? That's the third question.
Okay. So the first question, in response to your first question, we're well underway. So I believe for this financial year, we're about 6,000 plants, 6,000 to 7,000 plants are spoken for. And we're just working through how we go about the planting side of things with the kind of potential for the dry period over February, March. Working closely with the Te Tipu Tāna Nursery, so we're the supplier of the plants for the first 3 years of the program. And I should say separately, we're also working year 3 of our Charlton One Movement project. So there are also 10,000 plants that have gone on the ground up in that Gore area as part of that program. Yeah, so about 2/3 of the way through. And I would say reasonable uptake in terms of farmer awareness and farmer interest. And so I think that's tracking well, is what I would say.
So have we got any knowledge of people that are doing their own thing?
Yes.
Like, I don't think I'm on your books.
Yes. So at this point, so what I would say to you is I think that we have some work to do in promoting this. And so we're actively engaging now to actually raise awareness through media, through the various channels that we have. And the other thing that we're doing in the first instance, so one of our ways that we're connecting with people is through our Focus Activity Farm Plan program. So councillors will recall we have about 1,000 farm plans and contacts that we made through that program. So that's again a useful way. But certainly we know that there's opportunity to grow this program, and we are also in early conversations with Te Tipu Tāna about how we take the next step.
What is a waterway?
And what is a waterway? Well, waterway is per the RMA. So we're taking, I would have to say, through this program quite a broad approach to what is a waterway. So we wouldn't be constrained by actually that conversation at all in terms of, is it a drain, is it a modified watercourse, is it a naturally occurring waterway? We're probably trying to steer away at this point from gullies and critical source areas, but frankly, there's nothing to stop us, particularly where they're connected to a riparian area and extending in that space. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, right. So we've got Jeremy and then we've got Carl.
Just a couple of quick questions. Just one on the intensive winter grazing. Obviously, there's huge amounts of area getting plowed up at the moment and getting sown down. Still, everybody's reasonably like a wee bit of negativity about the consent side of things, but the team seems some pretty good stuff out there and generally in preparation. Or if they're on the ground, they're obviously looking at a bit of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, so we're very positive about that, about how farmers are going in that space. But we're looking to still run our program that we did this year, in sort of that January, February, March period, where we're going out and actually helping identifying farmers that perhaps might be in a situation where they have plowed too far into those critical source areas, or where they haven't quite left the buffers that they should, so that we can alert them to that. And it's not until they're a stop on the crop, it's not a compliance conversation, it's an education conversation to say, look, here's the requirements. What you've done might raise some risks in the winter period, and allow them that opportunity to then make sure they put in place the right fencing or mitigations or planning that needs to happen. So we think that's really critical. It will, councillors, be a little bit more challenging, I think, this year. I think as each year goes by, we've got some anxiety in our community, and so we'll have to navigate that as staff and make sure our staff are well supported in those conversations. But nonetheless, the intent is, that support and education. That's very important. We must keep going with that, even if it is at times challenging.
Thank you.
And just in regard to the freshwater farm plans, there was a comment that staff and Tammy were doing all the work in here and not involving farmers, but just to reiterate that there is farmer involvement on that. I just want to
I would just
clarify that.
just speak to that one briefly,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
Great.
So a couple of things. Firstly, I have to be honest, we have been under a reasonable amount of pressure to deliver the pilot in a relatively short period of time. And we've thought it's important to do that because actually, we know that it won't be too far away till we're implementing these. So we've engaged with a number of farmers who have provided what I would describe as free and frank feedback at times around the process. That's been really important. We've engaged with some rural professionals as well, some of the levy groups. And what we will be doing as we go into December, and just as an aside, there are some farming groups we've extended a specific invite to in December to come in and have some visibility over the current materials, where things are up to. But actually by Christmas, we need to actually have a plan from a regional perspective as to how we're actually going to implement this. It won't happen in January, but we need to have that plan in place so we know what needs to be done when the regulations are turned on and when council has received that order in council, to be able to press go on the farm plans. And we're absolutely happy and have extended that invite to people to come in and actually have both visibility, also to be involved in some of that planning work as well. Yeah.
It's good to hear. Obviously, there was a bit of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people grabbing it. It's good to hear that clarity.
Gail, big last question.
Sure, Fiona. It's probably just a point more than anything that Tonkin and Taylor need to be talking to the Tangata Tiaki, which are fisheries managers of the Mataitai, which this is sitting in. So, and that all comes under the South Island customary fishing regulation. So the area is a Mataitai, so it's been contaminated.
Is that that's Ocean Beach? Oh, thank you. Okay, no, I'll pass that on. Certainly, thanks for that, Gail. So to make sure we cover that off. We've been working quite closely with Te Marama, with Steve Rowe.
No, they need to talk to the Tangata Tiaki Kaitiaki that is under the regulations.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thanks very much for that, Fiona. I appreciate that update, and I think it's probably a good point that we do have an update or a wee session on those contaminated sites. Might be able to do that. So
Yeah,
thank you.
having some time, Mr. Chairman, to kind of work through all of the complexity of that. It's really
Can I have, thank you. Can I have a mover to note that report, please? Jeremy, and a seconder. Lyndall. Put it to the vote. For. Against. Thank you very much. Right, we move on to item 3, catchment operations. Randall, you're already here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take the report as read, and I'd like to take the opportunity to just talk a couple of things on the report. For the gravel management section, the bathymetric survey for the LiDAR bathymetric survey of the Matara River has been slowly completed. It's due to be completed in June, but we have asked them to prioritise the section with the 2D model for the core and the Matara sections for the hydrological model. For the Invercargill flood protection, we did undertake a second round of inspections as in late last week, and a further 66 rabbits were shot on that second inspection round. As noted in the report, the rabbit burrows can compromise the integrity of the stock banks and have been known to cause stock failures in the past. For the Matara catchment, we held the drop-in sessions, and some of the consistent feedback we received from the community was concerns around the gravel build-up below the bridge. We've undertaken the consent to progress the removal of this gravel, and we're planning to utilise that in the core stock bank upgrade construction season as part of the Crown infrastructure projects. As noted in the council quarry section, we haven't been successful in the negotiations to extend the existing quarry. So the landowner wishes to run his own commercial quarry on his land. So we will be exiting that agreement. Mr. Chairman, I welcome any questions.
Questions there?
Thank you. Just note with interest the work going on the Whitestone River, which of course I boundary, but I'm interested to know if the same rules of ecological reports applied to that as our forum presenters this morning. Were you here?
So thank you through the chair. We're working through that as a trial with key stakeholders. With minimal amount of vehicles that are supporting that trial.
Very short.
Thank you. Very good answer.
Just in regards to the quarries, obviously, from past experience, looking that, you know, it feels like we've lost another quarry a wee bit, and obviously with, in hindsight, pyramids, let that go too. I just want to clarify that we have got quarries that we are getting rock, because we certainly will need a lot of rock in the future, and just wanted to confirm that they have got other assets or that they're going to be able to use, and make sure we can get the work that materials we need to do the work in the future. So
Through the chair, the other quarry that we do hold operational in Mosburn still has significant resource left on it. Graham Hill quarry was depleted, and it actually needed to be extended for the purpose of producing more rock. I was undertaking make safe work.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Two questions, Mr. Chairman. On page 26, in relation to the Waiau catchment, Te Anau Basin, there's a mention there. This is something that has come up in the past to do with stock grazing or cut and carry on the marginal strips. And the question I have is, how can grazing in the river berms contribute to improved water quality? And what about further tree planting like we have had at various parts of our rivers? And the best example I know of at the moment is at Sobig on the Ariti, where trees are planted to reduce the growth of broom and gorse. So I sort of hope that we're not really seriously considering grazing in the river berm, certainly anywhere close to the water, and wonder if the program of tree planting can be continued or increased.
We deal with your first question first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, the trials have two purposes. So the advice and support that we've been getting from the stakeholders, as well as Professor Ian Fuller, is that we need to unlock the gravel banks from the vegetation so the gravel can flow through the system better. And in regards to the stock grazing, if light grazing can achieve removal of that vegetation and keep them weed free, as opposed to using aerial spraying, is probably a good outcome, I believe.
You got a second question there, Morris?
Yes, the second question is about the tree plant. Well, I do have another one that's separate to this, about the tree planting at Sobig and whether that program is planned to be expanded anywhere else.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not familiar with that trial. Do we have the team leaders here, or Fiona?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the key difference between the Te Anau Basin and the trial at Sobig on the Ariti is there's far more river berm available at Sobig to establish that sort of thing. We have trialled Lucerne up in the Te Anau Basin. We were dealing with the smaller river berms. Doc, in previous discussions, Kim McGraw was leading that project, indicated they didn't want to see trees planted in berms or trees.
Okay, so I take it from that there's nothing planned in the Te Anau Basin as far as as planting trees in the river berms, even if it might be enough room. But you consider there's not really enough room in those berms. Is that true? Is that right?
Certainly not in the Whitestone in the U-Park.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Now, the other question relates to Ian Fuller and the report on page 27, at the bottom of page 27, I was approached by Zane Moss from Fish and Game, who showed me talked to me about that workshop and showed me the PowerPoint slides that Ian Fuller had presented. And I found that very interesting. And I wonder just what further work is going to continue in this line. And I wondered also, and I have a proposed motion that you might like to consider, that Ian Fuller presents a similar talk, not obviously over 2 days, but perhaps over half an hour or something, to cover these issues, because it seems to me that it's a very important work, which could resolve quite a lot of the problems that we've heard about earlier today with a presentation from the Ariti farmers. And the proposal that I have, if you allow me, Mr. Chairman, to read it out, says that Ian Fuller be invited to speak to the Regional Services Committee and Liaison Committee chairs on the issues associated with river control works and how these affect natural character, with recommendations on how river management can provide for river ecological health while providing protection from the adverse effects of erosion and flooding. So I wonder if that can be considered, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll have a mover and a second and then a discussion on that.
Well, I'd like to move it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we've got a seconder for that.
For the sake of conversation, I think
Yes.
we need to talk about it.
Right.
I'll
Okay,
second it.
invite questions on that.
Can you repeat the,
Repeat it.
yeah,
please.
just even briefly.
Well, that Ian Fuller be invited to speak to the Regional Service Committee and Liaison Committee chairs on the issues associated with river control works and how these affect natural character, with recommendations on how river management can provide for river ecological health while providing protection from the adverse effects of erosion and flooding.
Okay, we've got some questions around that.
We're 3 months away from our next meeting, aren't we? So it gives us a bit of time for some dialogue.
Could I suggest, Morris, that a presentation be done? We have a meeting coming up, I think, in Winton with all the committee liaison chairs. Would that be appropriate place for that presentation? Because am I right in saying that Dr. Fuller has had a session with the catchment staff? That's what I did read, right? Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that he talks about, you'll be quite familiar with. Is that okay, Morris?
Yeah, that sounds good. If that's okay with the staff, and obviously if it's likely to produce some, a good outcome.
I think that's a really good idea to have it. The only, I think you need to pass the motion, obviously, but I think what I do need to do is I just need to double check the agenda, space, but I'll certainly do that. And if there is an issue, I'll bring it back. But I would proceed on the basis that we'll try to make it fit.
Okay. Right, any
Thank you, Paul.
discussion on that? We're quite happy to.
I don't know Ian Fuller, but Professor Ian Fuller, but I'm taking you more. I mean, any information is good information. In regards to the river map, we'll take the management's lead and things on this.
I wouldn't do if it's helpful before you make a decision, Chair. Randall, do you want to talk a little bit about Ian Fuller and what you've got to speak to? That might help just in terms of the decision.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. So Dr. Fuller is he's the leading geomorphologist at Massey University for the country. He runs short courses for river practitioners, such as the catchment operations team. We had been planning to send a couple of staff there, but I guess with the trying to grow our team and the turnover of staff we've had, I felt it was better to bring him to us. and share that training across all of the team, and we extended it. So at least we're all getting the same information at the same time. I think it's a good idea. We've also talked to Professor Fuller about developing a strategic gravel management best practice or best guidelines for us to operate to, but also being very clear that doing nothing is not an option. So we're looking at engaging him to undertake that work for us in January next year.
Okay. So any further discussion? Motion's on the floor, so put that to the vote for that, for Morris's motion then.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, look, we note that report of yours. Thank you very much, Randall, and we're going to move on for that. And a second, I think.
Jeremy did. Aye.
Yes. Against? Carried. Thank you. Well, we'll move on to the last report there. Contracts and works.
Yeah, I assume that we've got a bit of a typo. I think we're referring to Raymond, which should be we assume Randall. So he's at Raymond's not here. Randall is, so I'm delighted about that. So Randall, do you want to take us through? It's quite a
New moniker.
operational report. Talks about all of our contracts. I don't think we need to discuss debate it too much, Randall, but I'll hand over to you.
I'll take the report and read. I do have the team leaders present if there are any specific questions for any attachment areas of works that have been undertaken in the last quarter. It is the first quarter of the year, so it is more of a planning rather than a doing phase for us. Moving into the construction.
Any questions around that? Thanks. Seem pretty happy with that. Thanks very much, Randall. So that we move to note that. Anyone like that report, please, for us?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, second here.
Second.
For that.
Aye.
Yes. Carried. Thank you, Randall. Oh, yeah. Those reports. So we
just before we move off reports.
Yes.
It's a wee while since I've read standing orders, but I believe we're required to operate issues of natural justice, and an allegation was made earlier today with regard to DOC, and I think you might need to get some advice from Jan, but I think we should approach DOC and say these allegations have been made, do you want to respond? And that is how natural justice works. Push engagement. Sorry, that's how natural justice works.
Okay. Thanks.
But you might need to get some advice from Jan as to how you do that. But I believe it is an issue of natural justice.
Yeah, for a response. Yeah, I did mention something.
Yeah, you did. But
that,
we actually need to
believe
move
needs
on
to
it,
go
and in my view, it's sufficient. Well, in other committees I would chair, I would require that natural justice be pursued.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mark.
Maybe we could invite Fish and Game people to come to a committee meeting and put their point of view so we get a better understanding of it. This has been a very long-standing issue. Fish and Game and DOC have always been blamed for various things in the past, but in all my time on the council, I don't think we've ever actually had them along to say, well, I was there for a while, but since I've left, we haven't had anybody come along and say, well, what really are your issues in relation to these things, so we get a better understanding.
I think Councillor Roy's. We're just checking, and I think you're probably one of the most experienced councillors in the room. Councillor Roy will be correct. I think if we need to follow up after the meeting around some of the projects, we can do that.
That's what I'm asking,
Yeah,
is that
okay.
you just find the appropriate course of action.
Is there a motion?
Well, I've just recorded it and the action will reside with the chair.
I'm happy to second it if you need to.
Yeah, no, I think the chair's got it. I've just made the point and that the chair's just going to affirm that he's, yeah, it shouldn't need a motion, it stands, and unless you say you're out of order, it is an issue that we need to pursue.
We'll follow up on that.
Yeah, we'll follow up. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Okay. Well, we'll move out of those items and we'll go to number 11, which is update by department. Phil, welcome back. We haven't seen you for a few meetings.
Yes, I've been otherwise occupied. And I enjoy these meetings, so I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, when I have missed them. Do we have any media here at the moment? Oh, great. Right, so that's all right.
They will be online. They'll be online. They will view. Yeah.
Right, well, there's in the media recently, there was dolphin stranding down at Bluff, and interestingly enough, unfortunately, the calf expired and were unable to save that, but the mother was a dolphin from Tamatea Dusky, and she had been seen in July this year in Dusky. So it was most unusual that she was down in Bluff. So they get around these critters, but it was very unfortunate we couldn't save.
It was a bottlenose, not a hectare.
So it was unfortunate that the car expired. At the moment, we're still collating data and getting data from sea lions that have been tagged. Also, Hoiho nesting is very big. And so we've had various dogs who are trained in sniffing out nests, helping Sniper who's based in Dunedin. One nest was found and 2 chicks had hatched and they looked very healthy. Unfortunately, next time we visited, both chicks had expired. So both those chicks were sent up to Massey for an necropsy. Doc at the moment is it's a struggle at the moment. We've lost a lot of staff. We're carrying a lot of vacancies. And as you're aware, I'm sure people don't really want to see me, but as you're aware, with very low unemployment, it's very hard to get the right people. So yeah, we've had people, serious people retire, other people move on to other organisations or even other parts of the department itself. So yeah, times are challenging at the moment. What else can I tell you? Yeah, we've had updates with fire training, bits and pieces like that. Do you have any questions?
Yep, sure. Got a question. So in that torrential downpour in Fiordland, we lost a few huts. It's the one, just first one on the route room, and there's been other damage. How many of them now have been written off, and what are the state of the tracks?
I will have to come back to you with that because so yeah, can that be captured as a action point?
I just want to say, if you do have some information, we can put it into the publicly excluded.
Yep.
If you want to later, if you want to.
That's always good. Sometimes if I say something, it can be
that's all right.
taken out of context. Yeah. Any other questions at all?
Good, obviously, it's interesting. Is it just making people like everybody, all industry, everybody, there's especially in Southland. Is this a Southland thing in Doc, or is this a New Zealand?
It's a New Zealand wide thing.
So it's not a funding, this is always look at the government and funding, but but it's actually the money's there, but it's just not people.
Well, funding is an issue because, like, for example, our operational budget hasn't increased, it hasn't decreased, but expenses have increased. With lack of international tourism, the money we would gain from that we've had to try and cover that, so we've had to part work. And we're very much operating as a region for Southern South Island, not just looking at district offices, but looking region-wide. So it has its challenges. In the past, when we've advertised, we'd have 40 to 50 applicants. We might have 10. So it's, it's remarkable, the impact. So,
Roughly, just how many, do you know how many jobs are vacant? I mean, just if you don't, that's cool.
within the operations team here locally, about 6.
It's in the southern, there's in
This in
Marahuku, yeah.
This is Macau.
It's just operations, it's not administration or anything else.
Just an operation.
People, this on the ground.
Morris, you've got a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Hello, Phil. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Morris.
Even though I am remote. To a question about the conservation management strategies and the building of cycleways through DOC land. I understand now that DOC has put a hold on building new cycleways, such as what might have been proposed by the Fiordland Trails Trust up the side of Lake Te Anau. I understand that those can't proceed at the moment until conservation management strategies are reviewed. Can you give us any update on where that's at and if that's likely to be resolved anytime?
Yep, I can answer part of that question, Morris, where the Otago Conservation Management Strategy has been amended to look at different groups who wanted to construct cycleways in the Catlins in South Otago. I can't comment, and I mean, a variation is being prepared for the CMS for that. I can't comment about the Fiordland plan there. I'm not unsure. You mentioned that they've been put on hold. I don't know about that. I'm sorry. This is where I really need to liaise with our Te Anau office.
I was referring to, there's a proposal by the Fiordland Trails Trust to build a track from Te Anau, Surprise Bay area up towards Te Anau Downs. And also there's a proposal by a Waiau group to build a cycleway from Manapuri down to Tuatapere as well. And some of that is on DOC land. And I don't think that can go ahead until this issue is resolved.
Yeah, I believe that is true. I've heard about the Waiau one. The Te Anau one, I haven't heard of that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the so the Southland Conservation Management Strategy, is that being reviewed to look at that again or not? Not really.
Not that I'm aware of. The last couple of Southland Conservation Board meetings I've attended, I don't recall them discussing that.
Right.
I have mentioned cycle trails, but I don't recall amending the Southland Conservation Management Strategy. I know the Otago one definitely has been and is being. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, any other questions? Thanks very much, Phil.
No problem at all.
Appreciate that. Come back and see us again, please.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we'll move on to any extraordinary and urgent business. Yeah. Yes, right now. Move to extraordinary public excluded business.
Can you tell us why we need to do this?
I'm not quite highly experienced, so I need to take the time a bit for the first couple of times. So, Carol, would you give us an explanation why we need to do this?
So there's 2 matters that were excluded public from, and that is the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting and police inspection reports. And this is to enable any local authority holding the information to carry out without prejudice or disadvantage commercial activities, and also to protect the privacy of natural persons, including that of deceased natural persons.
That's excellent. I'll move. We go to publicly excluded.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Vote, please.